right, we are live. Welcome to today's AAPI Heritage Month newsletters. Today we have a very special guest, Miss Loretta, Washington.
All right. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity. I am very honored to take part in our interview today for our Asian Pacific Islander Month. Well, as you said, I am Loretta Washington. I hail from the island of New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand. I went to high school in Hawaii, probably moved there in the mid 80s. And that is where I enlisted from Hawaii into the Air Force. So Bradford Rams, hey, shout out to Bradford Rams in Salt Lake. That's where I went to high school, and I was I was exposed to our military brats there. When I went to high school there with all of the military brats at Radford, I really was intrigued by their lifestyle and their traveling all over the world. So I really enjoyed that. I am the youngest of 5. I have 4 older brothers. And again, I don't know if I already said it, but I am Samoan. Both of my parents migrated to New Zealand from the island of Samoa, which is not really common. A lot of the Samoans that I come across are from American Samoa with a few ties back to what used to be Western Samoa. But my parents migrated to New Zealand probably back in the 50s, and that's where my brothers and I were born. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Very boring. I love being stationed overseas. I was born overseas, and being stateside, it's probably the longest I've been stateside. So it's been very interesting in trying to travel the mainland, is what we can call it, back from Hawaii, and trying to learn about the actual CONUS. So it's been fun. We moved from from New Zealand to Hawaii, just in search of the American dream. My father, he was a pastor in Hawaii, and that's how my family uprooted from New Zealand so that we can be in Hawaii. Humble beginnings, very humble beginnings. I'm from Waianae in Hawaii. At the time, I didn't think it was a humble, that I didn't have much. But for me, as a child coming up, I felt like I had everything that I needed, right? I had the beach and the bus. I got around places where I needed to go. So I really didn't feel like I was missing anything. And it wasn't until I went to high school that I was just like, there's some other things in the world, It was a different lifestyle than what I was familiar with in New Zealand, but it was enough for me. The way that my culture is, my father was very strong in our culture. My father's village is in Salolonga, Savai. So I hold his Matai name, which is basically the chief name of our family. So in 2006, I kind of took that over, and it's become a big part of my life as the way that I carry myself, as the way I conduct business, and the way that I interact with my family as well as others. So that's what it's like to be, growing up in the Pacific. A lot of our things are based on respect and being kind to each other and taking care of one another. So very boring stuff, but we work with it.
Oh, no, nothing boring about your life, ma'am.
So again, like I told you, I came in from a high school that had a lot of military brats. And the funny story that I'm going to tell at my retirement ceremony is we went to the NEX. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hawaii at all, but the NEX is the big AAPIs, if you will, for us in Hawaii. So I remember after school, going over there, and I was like, oh, we're gonna go to the BX. I'm gonna go see what that's like. And trying to get into the actual NEX, well, I was stopped by the little lady that's usually standing in the front. She goes, "Oh, excuse me, you're gonna have to go and wait at the ice cream shop at the Baskin Robbins for your friends because you can't come in." So as she meant it in a very nice way, and I was just like, "Oh, I know this lady didn't just tell me that I can't get up in here." So then I was just like, okay, well, I tell you what, I'm going to join the Air Force and I'm going to come into this NEX. And here I am. It's just the silly little story of, oh, you're telling me I can't go inside. Okay, I'm going. But that is the funny part of me coming in. But on a serious note, me coming into the Air Force was something that I represent my family. I'm the first of my family, of my immediate family, to join the military, period. Whether it's a military back home in New Zealand, or it's the military, the America big Air Force, the greatest Air Force ever, right? I wanted to go to school. My whole dream is to make my mom and dad proud. And that is the reason why I came in. My why, that is it, to make my mom and dad proud. My how is my family, my culture. Those things mean everything to me, right? So it's also my why, and how I sit here before you today, 26 years later. I'm like, how did these years just pass me up just like that? I still think I'm 20 something, but my knees tell me different. So yeah. Back in the day, when at the airport in Hawaii, everybody is able to go to the actual gate and say goodbye to you. And I remember my parents dropping me off. Now, my Samoan parents don't let me go anywhere. Now, I can spend the night at my cousin's house, but I'm coming right back. And I would go home to New Zealand. I'll stay a few weeks and I'd come back. I've never been away from my parents. Now, mind you, my parents had to sign me in when I was 17, and I didn't get a spot until the February of the following year in 1995. So when they dropped me off, it was that feeling of, oh, I'm gonna miss my mom, but I'm about to be a big girl too. And when I remember getting to basic, and they were so busy that people were yelling at me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, let me just get here. I'm used to my mom yelling at me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is kind of easy. That part was easy for me because I'm just like, oh, just imagine your mom yelling at you. That's what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, okay, I got this. But it wasn't until I actually got that first phone call that I got to call back home, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to come back home. I miss my parents so much that I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything else but the Air Force at that time. And for me, my family was back home in Hawaii, and I really miss them. And now that the Air Force is now part of my family, it's just like, oh, I got used to it being a big girl, being on my own, and kind of separating myself. Because usually in the Samoan family, the only time that you're leaving your family is when you get married off and then you go with your husband's family, right? And that's usually what we're supposed to do, or we stay home with our parents forever. For me, I left home not under those conditions. And at 21 is usually when we get a key back home. It's a symbolism of you're being old enough, that you're good enough to go by yourself. And I did that at barely 18 years old. But it was a growing experience for me, and something that I will never forget. Seeing the pride in my mom and dad's eyes when I'm sending them pictures and sending them my paycheck, that was everything. That was everything. So yeah, those are wonderful memories. It was long ago, but you know what? I still remember those feelings. I am a medical admin by trade. I'm a 4AO. I've been a 4AO, basically a medical administrator on the enlisted side for 24 of my 26 years. My special duty was a career assistance advisor, where I went to OSAN, and I was a career assistance advisor there for 2 years with my family. So my first duty station was Travis. So it was the West Side, right? It was still on the West Coast. So I was just like, oh, we're still home. You know, there's still Samoan people there, people that look like me. And I felt kind of, okay, I still have family in the Bay Area. I'm able to go and see them. But Travis was my longest base. It was my longest base, and probably where I felt the most comfortable, probably too comfortable, where officers always get to go to college so that they can live out their young life, right? Myself, I was an airman at Travis, just trying to get through with my friends, which became my family. And I got a lot of schooling done there too. So I finished my bachelor's degree there, and then I got an assignment to Okinawa, Japan. So yeah, it was a blessing in disguise. But the greatest thing that happened to me on my first duty station is that I had my oldest son, Tyson. He's now 24 years old, and he went to University of Arizona, where he had a degree in public health. So yeah. So I made it. Yeah, nice. Him making it is me making it, you know? We never really fit in the puzzle that was given to us. So if I explain it to somebody, it's about, I came in to the Air Force, and majority of the people that were in were either Black or white. And then there was also Hispanic people, Mexican folks as well, right? There was nothing really for me to kind of fit in. So I really had to, I had to pick where I fit in this puzzle of mine. I tried to make my own way, but it's not, that wasn't, when you're by yourself, when I was by myself, I felt like I needed to find somewhere where I identified the most with. Not that it was my identity, but it was where I identified with the most, right? That's a big difference for me, because I am Samoan. And where I fit the best was with my African-American friends who were Black. So coming up, that's basically who my friends were. I don't feel like it was a challenge for me. I never experienced any racial injustice, but I knew that I had to work harder. That maybe that was just something that was within me of, I need to be the best. I need to, okay, something hurts your feelings, or yes, they misunderstood what you said because you said it too loud and you said it too strong. So I'm basically known as the passionate Polynesian, right? If that's a word, of being passionate, but that was my way of, I had to stand my ground in where I belonged and how I identified and kept my own culture and my own identity, which is being the passionate Polynesian, if you will. I've been blessed in that department. When I was an airman, I had a master sergeant who seeked me out with his wife, because in common, the person that we had in common was my basic training friend. She is still family. We're still family now. He was a logistics, he was supply, just basically fuels in supply. And he intentionally, him and his wife sought me out to make sure that I was okay. In a world that I was by myself, and I did not have my family close on base. I'd have to either drive to Richmond or down to Daly City in order for me to get to my blood, to my family. But my mentor took me under his wing and kind of taught me to compartmentalize my passionate side, right? How that can be taken out of context, and that it can turn a lot of people off if I use too much of my passion. And I'm like, well, I can't cuss, so this is the best that I can do. Is I'm loud, I'm boisterous, but sometimes that you have to know the difference, and that's probably what I learned the most from him, is that you have to know the difference on when to turn your volume up and turn your volume down in order to have that impact that you need. So that's he is one of my mentors. He retired as a Chief Master Sergeant Neighbors. He was one of my first mentors. And then I had a local boy he's from Hilo. When I first became a Master Sergeant at Luke Air Force Base, I was coming back from a deployment and I saw him. And I don't know if everybody does this, but when we first saw each other, we were kind of like, what's up? It's like trying to size each other up. And he was a senior master sergeant, I was a master sergeant. At any point, I was just going to go ahead and stand down at any point, right? But as soon as I told him where I was from, and I watched his style, he really took me under his wing, and he taught me how to be still passionate and not be ashamed of where we come from and how we take care of our people. And whether it be a white person, a Black person, a Polynesian person, that does not matter. Not that it mattered before, but his style, he is so, what we would call back home as mok. He is so passionate. Sometimes you have to be like, what did he just say? I have to translate for some of my friends, but I'm just like, look, he's just mad. But he's mad for a reason, because he wants to take care of his people. And when I saw his style of leadership, it was still the type of person that I was, that being passionate, but he was being him. There was no more, at Master Sergeant for me, it was not playing the game. It was about, at that point, it was about taking care of our folks and allowing them to see the type of leaders that we are, of taking care of them. Once I take care of them, they'll turn around and take care of me. And that took me a little bit for me to understand, right? Because coming up the ranks, I was just hustling. I was just putting my head down, working where I'm supposed to work, go to school. And it didn't dawn on me that the values and everything that we learned growing up in the islands is something that I could leverage for myself to make sure that I take care of my folks. And ever since I took on that type of leadership skill or passion, the rest is history, right? Because it's not about me, it's about taking care of my folks. And Senior Master Sergeant Rob Velez, that was a priceless thing that I had learned from him. And he's a local boy, I was just like, oh, we speak the same language, all broken English and everything. But I understood what he was saying, because everything that he said was from the heart, and even though sometimes I would think that he's yelling at me, and I was just like, oh no, he's not yelling at me. He's just talking regular, that's his calm voice. But like I tell my people, don't never mistake the tone of my voice for the message that I'm trying to tell you, because the tone of my voice is just all that extra stuff, because I'm Polynesian and I come with all that extra stuff, the extra fireworks, but the message is always going to be that it comes with intent of caring and wanting the best for my people. So, yeah. Risk versus reward. So when my father passed away and I was in England, I got the message in England, and I turned and burned to go home the very next day. And I have a lot of regret on that, because the risk that I took in staying overseas and not being with my family was a big risk that I took. I should have stayed home. I did a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but my intent was to always make my parents proud. One of my latest adventures was, I just returned to Travis. I just got to Travis, and less than a year later, I had pressed the button to go to Korea by myself. The first time that I went with my family. And this time I was coming to the end of my career and I was kind of ready to go. But I knew, and I promised my father before he passed, that I will make Chief Master Sergeant. That is the pinnacle. And my promise to my dad on his dying bed, I promise you that I will finish what I said I was going to do. But when I volunteered for OSAN, it was out of being selfish. My family, my husband, who was a senior master sergeant, his maintainer, I didn't even consult him, right? And I didn't consult my kids either. But I knew in my heart what I had promised my dad, and I knew the move that I had to. So I went back to playing the game, right? I know I have to make this move in order for me to make that last strike. Am I willing to take it? And I had this conversation with myself, and self says, Loretta, you can do it. You don't need to ask, just press the button. So I sent that email back, and it was an email that I regret now, because time I cannot get back, right? Because once I hit, after my year at OSAN, being the superintendent in the medical support squadron there, I did make chief, but that cost me my family, a year from my family, and also where I have to move several more times, and my poor kids have to change 2-3 more schools in their high school career. My oldest son, he started high school in OSAN, then he went to England, and then he went to Hawaii. Of course, he went to Radford, go Radford Rams, but that's 3 different high schools and somewhere where he's developing the most in high school, his social skills and everything. Well, today, my children live in Arizona with my husband because I have active duty service commitment. And that's the price I had to pay for the stripe, right? And although fulfilling in some, where I had fulfilled something that I had promised my family, my mom and my dad, it still cost me time, and still cost me time with my family, although my husband understands. And it was a challenge for us. That risk cost me a lot, but you know what? This is where we sit now, and we just have to be resilient to it, right? So in a few years, I'll retire, and I'll be in Arizona, when we'll be drinking Mai Tais at my pool. Hopefully we'll be laughing at this, but for right now, we're still trying to weather it. But yeah, that's one of my risks, one of the biggest risks that I've taken. But again, it was something driven from what I wanted to make my mom and my dad proud. Yeah. A lot of the times, I like to, I wouldn't say fight, but I'm very passionate about how I feel about things, right? So whether it's taking care of my airmen, or I'd be sitting back in my office and I hear somebody walking up to my customer service area and they're a little upset because they were late on the tasker and now they're taking it out on my A1C in the front. So then I'd have to step out of my office, and that's where my passionate Polynesian comes out, right? And I call it my mama bear syndrome, but it's in everything that I do. I take that from my father of taking care of your people, no matter what the cost. And sometimes I get my hand slapped. Most of the time I end up getting what I want. So you have to weigh your risk. Back to your question of, oh, is the risk worth it? Yes, sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. But for you to sit back, for me to sit back and hold all those Psalm 1 feelings within me and not share it on what my thoughts are, those is usually the times that I regret. So I rather say what my feelings are, whatever they may be. And that way I'm transparent. Sometimes being too transparent though, I found that can also be a double-edged sword for me, right? My passion is my airmen, my NTOs, my senior NTOs. But when people know what your weakness is, that's where they will attack. And that makes me even more mad, but it's okay. You have to stick to the game plan and kind of figure out how to weather through those things. But yeah.
Okay.
To sit back and not do anything when you try something and they keep coming back and they say no, and you're done. You just tuck your tail and you go and sit down in a corner. You don't do anything else. That to me is failure, right? This path has never been easy for myself. I went to school. I got denied from being an officer within the medical field. And then I applied for a couple more opportunities to be an officer. Even after I got my master's degree, I was also denied. And I was told, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket, just keep going, right? But I knew that the alternative, if I don't keep trying, is that it is failure and I wouldn't be able to make my parents proud. I'm the first to finish school. It took me a while to finish school. I started community college right after high school, and then I realized, man, I can't afford it, right? So when I came into the Air Force, that was one of my main things that I wanted to do while I was young, that was a quick fix. I could get my degree and make my mom and dad proud. Because they'd come up to California every now and then for church stuff, and they'd be able to come to my graduation. Done skiing. Check, I'm done with my degree. But when I wanted to become an officer, that feeling of failure for me was just like, oh my gosh, how many more times do I need to try to become an officer? But God knew. I mean, God knew that wasn't my path. My path was this, in order for me to be a chief and go this path. And as soon as I became one with that to the top on this side, on the enlisted side, it was just, that vision for me was to the top and taking care of my folks all the way, right? So even though I was knocked down I got the no, when it came for me to apply to be an officer, I knew that being on the enlisted side, once I focus on that side, that everything will come as long as I stay steady with doing my work and taking care of my people. So failure was not an option. One of the things that Passover Day was one of those days that I felt sick. And I was just like, man, I'm gonna keep coming. I'm gonna keep coming. My husband and I, we were senior airmen. We made staff together all the way up to senior. And I was always trailing him. When I wouldn't make it, he would make it. And then it just made me more determined, right? So every time I fell down, I get up, wipe my little tears, and I keep it moving. So yes, that for me, failure is not an option. And it's not an option for my people either, because I like to remind them that, hey, if it's not the Air Force, our civilian life is just as good. You don't have to stay in for 20, because a lot of times we say, hey, you got to stay in for 20 or you got to make this. Who am I to say that, right? This may not be their calling to be in the Air Force for 20, 30 years. It might just be just a stepping stone to whatever they're going to be successful at when they get out of the Air Force. So Yeah. I want to be known as that Polynesian passionate chief that took care of my people. We can remember a lot of things, but that feeling of safety, of knowing that somebody has your back, priceless, priceless. I remember I told you of my mentor 20 years ago, 26 years ago, and that feeling that I sit with her right now is just as new as it was 26 years ago. And we are lifetime friends today. They're godparents to my kids. That feeling I want for those that that remember me, right? I want them to remember me as, hey, Chief Washington took care of me. This is how she would have did it. Because that's how I think of my mentors. What were my mentors? How would they have dealt with the situation? And that's how I would like my folks to remember, because the way that I came up is just to be kind and take care of each other. Very basic things, right? And I want them to be kind. Remember, hey, if all else fails, be kind, take a breath, take care of each other, because everything else is it's gonna work out. Heck, if I'm not proof of that, I don't know what is. What could we do, right? And we have to be careful on how we approach, because sometimes it can be taken the wrong way. It could be too extreme, but like anything else, whether it's Black Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, all of that, we as leaders, as long as we show each other that we care for each other and we respect each other's culture, that is the most important thing. The Asian Pacific Islanders, there's a reason why they put us in one little block, right? There's Black, white, Hispanic, and then there's Asian Pacific Islanders. We might have Hawaiian in one, but then most of the time we're together because there's so many of us. There are so many countries, and it's so important that we remember where we come from, because a lot of our countries and the way that we come about is we base it on respect. And if we don't teach that in our communities and as leaders, that I respect the fact that I am Samoan and there is a white man that I work for. Okay, it just so happens that most of the time that I work for a white man, right? But I have to respect the fact that he is different than I, and that he has to give me that respect. And I have to give him the same respect that I'm asking for. I'm different, and as long as I explain to him, or I'm telling you, I'm so like islandery. I have there's 135 of us in DC right now. We're giving out vaccine shots, and I have them mili pakia all day long. And they're like, what in the heck is she doing? But I do that because I want them to remember that, hey, she's different. She's teaching me something different. I'm not every chief. And I don't want to be every chief. I want to be the Samoan chief that I am, so that they can respect where I come from and that they can respect each other. That is one of the most important things that we can do as leaders, is to teach our folks that there's something different. In America, it's being white or being Black is something it's common, right? Being Asian, but Asian Pacific Islanders, we've been here. Asian Pacific Islanders helped build America, but yet now we sit in a position where they're being targeted. And I don't know how to fix it, but what my job is as a leader is to help people understand that there is more to America than just the Black and the white, right? There is us that are Asian Pacific Islanders, and we bring something to the table as well. I'd be lying to you if I say that even in our Asian Pacific Islander community, we have our own little prejudices. Hawaii, yes, we make fun of each other all day long, but it's out of fun and it's out of respect because we laugh at each other and our differences. But in the end, we will fight for each other as if we came from the same family and the same bloodline. And that's what I want to do in my own like work section, is that doesn't matter where we come from. In here, we have to respect each other where we come from. And that's the beauty of the Air Force or the military, is that we're taught to get together. But there's some people that don't see that that's something that is acceptable. And that's what I aim to break down, is that, hey, we're still a family. Whether your parents taught you to hate me, that's not what I'm about. You know, if you should just show them just a little bit of something else, they will understand. But that can't stop us on the way that we've been grown. We've been taught as Asian Pacific Islanders to show them that, right? We see it. I see it on the news, and I get so disappointed. It's heartbreaking to see that. It's heartbreaking to see Black Americans being killed by police, Asian Americans being attacked on a subway. I'm like, what is going on right now, right? But if we take our part in our little community and we teach each other, hey, it's okay to be different, I think that will make the difference in the world. So, yeah. But that's right here, my shirt. Yeah. I think one of the things that if I could impart into for our younger generation is that take your time, be still. A lot of the times we rush. One of the things that I did when I was younger was like I was rushing to try to get to the top, but I never did kind of like stand back and really appreciate the ranks that I came through and understanding those positions that I have been in. I mean, yes, it probably sounds crazy that I sit here now and I say, oh, go ahead and take your time. But no, I say that with a lot of sincerity of, I've missed my family, the things that are important to me. I missed my husband, my children, because why? I was such in a rush that now my kids are about to leave for college. And here I am like, oh, no, come over here. We'll spend some time together. I'm too late. So enjoying your family and slow your time and, appreciate those things that you have. Because before you know it, I think that I'm young, but I never thought that I would lose the people that I loved throughout my career. In the 26 years, I could have been sitting in Hawaii, right? But I was such in a rush to try to get to where I'm sitting now that I missed a lot of opportunities that I would pay priceless money for me to get back. Time with my kids, time with my father that has passed. So yes, that is one of the big things. It's a slope. And also one of the things I like to share with my folks is that being a leader should be seamless, right? It is something that it's like bling bling on your shoulder or on your chest, but it only embellishes the type of person that you are. And you have to remember that, because some people get lost in the rank that they wear. The higher up they get, the more they just go crazy, right? But you want to balance yourself with, I am Loretta Washington first. I am Ulufotu Matamua's daughter first. I am my husband's wife first. I am my children's mother first. I represent my people. I hold a Matai name, a chief name of Matamua Loretta first, and then my rank. You have to see all of that. And my goal is that you see all of that before you see that I'm a chief master sergeant I want you to treat me as if I'm Loretta Washington first, and the kindness that I like to portray, or I like to share with people, or the love and aloha that I want to share with people, I want you to see that first. And if that's the only thing that I can tell somebody, is rank only embellishes the type of person that you are. So you have to work on the person that you are and be genuine. Be you. Everything else will follow. So yeah, and that's it. I wish you guys all the luck in the world. I pray for you, and I hope that you guys are very successful, because like I said, we are a small minority, a small percentage in the United States Air Force, let alone the military alone. So when we make it, you have to turn around and you have to bring others up with you. And if you don't do that, then you have no, for me, I would have no purpose. So my purpose is to turn and pull somebody up. And then their job is to turn and mentor and build another chief, and build another chief, and build another colonel, or build another lieutenant colonel, or build a general. That would be awesome, right? That's what we do. Everything else, no matter, I have to be one with the type of person that I am, whether I made chief or not. I know that when I leave this Air Force, I did everything that I could to take care of my people. So yeah, thank you. Thanks again for the opportunity. I really love sharing my story with you. I know it's been kind of like long, and but it's okay. I do still appreciate you taking the time to interview me and sharing the stories of my 26 years. Oh gosh, it's so long. But yeah, if you ever need anything, please reach out to me, because our community, whether it's anybody, right? Our Asian Pacific Islanders, we're inclusive to everybody comes into our house. When they come into our house, they're part of our family.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chief. And on behalf of our Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month team, we really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, stories, leadership perspective with us, not just with us, but to our audience. And with that, I just want to say thank you for watching. I'm going to leave you with this, keep embracing diversity, empowering inclusion, and always, always keep breaking barriers. All right.
Thank you.
May you all have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.